What life was really like for a servant in a medieval castle. Imagine waking up long before the sun has even considered rising above the horizon. The world around you is still wrapped in darkness, not the soft darkness of a modern bedroom, but a deep and ancient darkness that fills every corner of a stone castle. The air is cold enough to sting your nose. Somewhere nearby, someone shifts beneath a wool blanket. A wooden beam creaks overhead. Beyond the walls, the wind drifts across the countryside and brushes against the castle towers. You open your eyes, and for a brief moment there is silence. It is one of the few quiet moments you will experience all day. You are not a lord, you are not a knight. No songs will be written about your achievements. No one will carve your face into stone. You are a servant, one of dozens, perhaps hundreds, of people whose labor keeps the castle alive. And the day is already waiting for you. Before noble families wake, before breakfast appears on tables, before fires begin crackling in grand chambers, servants must begin their work. Slowly, you sit up from your sleeping place. Calling it a bed might be generous. Depending on the castle and your position within the household, you may sleep on a simple straw mattress, a wooden platform, or a rough pallet stuffed with dried grass. Comfort is not the primary concern. Shelter is. The blanket covering you is heavy and coarse. It traps some warmth, but carries the smell of smoke, damp wool, and long use. Around you, other servants are beginning to wake as well. No alarm clock announces the start of the day. Instead, years of routine have trained everyone to rise at nearly the same time. Outside, the castle remains dark, but work has already begun. You pull on your clothes. A servant's wardrobe is practical rather than impressive. Rough wool garments provide warmth. Linen underclothes help protect the skin from scratchy outer layers. The colors are often dull and natural, shaped more by available dyes than by fashion. No one expects elegance from a servant. What matters is durability. The same garments may be repaired repeatedly over months or years. Small patches cover worn areas, threads are replaced, tears are mended. Clothing is valuable. Nothing is wasted. As you step into a narrow corridor, the castle feels almost alive. Even in darkness, it breathes. Cold air slips through cracks in stone walls. The faint scent of yesterday's cooking lingers near the kitchens. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. A gate guard coughs from atop the walls. Castles often appear romantic in paintings and films. They rise dramatically above rivers and hills, crowned with towers and battlements. But living inside one is a very different experience. Stone is magnificent. Stone is also cold. Much colder than many modern people imagine. During winter, large sections of a castle can feel like giant refrigerators. Even in warmer seasons, thick walls keep interiors cool and sometimes damp. Servants experience every part of this environment. The grand hall may host feasts and celebrations, but someone must sweep its floors afterward. The noble chambers may glow with firelight, but someone must carry the wood that feeds those fires. The Lord may enjoy fresh bread at breakfast, but someone must wake before dawn to help prepare it. In many ways, the castle is a machine, and servants are the gears that keep it moving. One of the first tasks of the morning involves fire. Throughout the night, many hearths have burned low. Embers hide beneath layers of ash, waiting to be coaxed back to life. A servant kneels beside a fireplace, carefully stirring the remains of yesterday's fire. A few glowing coals still survive. That is good news. Starting a fire from surviving embers is far easier than creating one entirely from scratch. Small pieces of kindling are added, dry wood follows. Soon, thin ribbons of smoke curl upward. A faint orange glow grows stronger. Warmth slowly returns to the room. Multiply this task across numerous fireplaces throughout the castle, and it becomes clear why so many servants are needed. Heat requires labor. Constant labor. Meanwhile, the kitchens begin their own transformation. The castle kitchen is among the busiest places in the entire household. Even before sunrise, activity fills the room. Wood crackles in enormous hearths. Water heats in iron pots. Bakers prepare dough. Kitchen servants organize ingredients. The smell of smoke mixes with bread, onions, herbs, and damp stone. For many servants, the kitchen is the center of daily life. Not because it is comfortable, because it never stops. Food preparation in a castle is a massive undertaking. The larger the household, the greater the challenge. A noble family may dine alongside guests, officials, guards, and household staff. Feeding everyone requires planning, storage, labor, and constant attention. There are no refrigerators, no electric ovens, no delivery trucks arriving with fresh supplies. Everything depends upon human effort. Someone gathers firewood. Someone mills grain. Someone tends gardens. Someone raises livestock. Someone transports barrels. Someone washes dishes. Someone cleans spills. And often, the same servant performs several of those jobs in a single day. Breakfast itself varies according to wealth, season, and location. For nobles, the morning meal may include fresh bread, cheese, ale, eggs, or meat. For servants, meals are usually simpler. Dark bread, porridge, vegetable stew, perhaps a piece of cheese if supplies allow. Yet even simple food is valuable. Medieval life is closely tied to harvests and weather. A poor harvest can affect everyone inside the castle walls. Food is rarely taken for granted. As daylight slowly appears beyond narrow windows, the castle begins waking fully. Moory footsteps echo through corridors. Doors open. Voices grow louder. The day gathers momentum. And for servants, the busiest hours are only beginning. A visitor walking through the castle might notice banners hanging from walls, colorful clothing, polished tables, and impressive architecture. What they might not notice are the countless invisible tasks happening behind the scenes. A floor appears clean because someone swept it. A room feels warm because someone carried fuel. Fresh water sits ready because someone hauled it there. The illusion of effortless noble life rests upon endless effort from others. And much of that effort is exhausting. Water, for example, is one of the most important necessities in castle life. Modern people rarely think about water. Turn a handle and it appears. In the Middle Ages, every bucket matters. Every drop must come from somewhere. Many castles possess wells, which help enormously. Others rely partly upon nearby rivers, springs, or stored supplies. Regardless of the source, transporting water requires physical work. Heavy physical work. A servant carrying full buckets across uneven stone floors quickly discovers how heavy water truly is. The task repeats endlessly. Water for cooking. Water for cleaning. Water for washing. Water for animals. Water for brewing. Water for countless daily needs. The castle seems to drink constantly, and servants must satisfy that thirst. By mid-morning, the pace of activity can feel relentless. Yet there is a rhythm to it. A rhythm learned through repetition. The same corridors. The same tasks. The same expectations. Day after day. Season after season. Year after year. Some servants enter castle service while still young teenagers. Others spend most of their adult lives within the same household. Over time, every corner of the castle becomes familiar. The location of every staircase, the sound of every door, the habits of every noble, the moods of every supervisor. Knowledge becomes valuable. Experience becomes valuable. Reliability becomes valuable. A servant who performs duties well may earn trust. And trust, in a world shaped by hierarchy, can sometimes improve daily life in small but meaningful ways. Still, no amount of experience removes the simple reality that service is labor. Hard labor, physical labor, the sort of labor that leaves hands rough and muscles aching. And the day has barely begun. The morning light now reaches deeper into the castle, slipping through narrow windows and arrow slits, painting thin stripes across stone floors that have already seen hours of activity. While the noble household is beginning its day, many servants feel as though they have already lived half of one. The castle is a place of hierarchy. Everyone knows their position, and everyone is expected to behave accordingly. This order shapes nearly every moment of your life. At the very top stands the Lord, master of the estate and the lands surrounding it. His decisions affect hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people beyond the castle walls. Beneath him is his family, followed by trusted officials, stewards, knights, and other important figures. Far below them stand the servants. Even among servants, rank matters. The steward may supervise the entire household. The head cook commands the kitchen. Senior servants direct junior ones. Stable workers care for horses. Laundry workers manage endless piles of clothing and linens. Chamber servants maintain private rooms. Scullions perform some of the most difficult and least glamorous tasks. Everyone has responsibilities. Everyone answers to someone. A mistake rarely travels upward. It usually travels downward. This means that pressure can flow through the castle much like water through a stream. When a noble becomes irritated, that frustration may eventually reach the lowest-ranking worker. For this reason, many servants learn an important skill. Not cooking, not cleaning, not carrying water. The skill of remaining unnoticed. A successful servant often masters the art of being present without drawing attention. Meals appear when needed. Rooms are cleaned. Fires are maintained. Beds are prepared. Doors are opened. And all of it happens with minimal disruption. In a strange way, excellence in service sometimes means becoming nearly invisible. Of course, invisibility is not always possible, particularly in the Great Hall. The Great Hall is the heart of many castles. It serves as dining room, gathering place, meeting chamber, and symbol of power. Visitors entering the hall are meant to be impressed. High ceilings stretch overhead. Long tables dominate the space. Banners hang from beams. Fireplaces burn along the walls. Sunlight filters through windows when weather allows. At first glance, the hall appears grand. But if you are a servant, you see something else. Work. You see benches that must be arranged. Tables that must be cleaned. Floor rushes that must be replaced. Food that must be served. Spills that must be wiped away. Dishes that must eventually be carried back to the kitchen. The hall is beautiful partly because servants work constantly to keep it that way. When meals begin, the atmosphere changes dramatically. Conversation fills the room. Footsteps echo. Dogs wander hopefully beneath tables. The smell of roasted meat drifts through the air. Servants move carefully between guests, balancing heavy platters and pitchers. A single mistake can create embarrassment. Imagine carrying a large dish through a crowded hall. The floor is uneven. People are moving. Someone unexpectedly steps backward. A dog darts across your path. You adjust your balance at the last moment. Success often depends upon experience and concentration. Fortunately, servants become experts at navigating crowded spaces. They must. The alternative can be unpleasant. The kitchen remains equally busy. In some ways, it resembles a small world unto itself. The heat is intense. Smoke drifts through the air. Knives chop vegetables. Cooks issue instructions. Pots bubble over open flames. Workers hurry between stations. Unlike the elegant image many people associate with castles, kitchens are practical places. Messy places. Loud places. Places where food preparation requires teamwork. The largest castles can consume astonishing quantities of food. Bread, meat, fish, vegetables, herbs, grains, cheese, and ale move constantly through the kitchen. Storage is a major concern. Food preservation matters enormously. Without modern refrigeration, people rely upon salting, smoking, drying, pickling, and careful storage. Entire sections of the household focus on maintaining supplies. A castle cannot simply run to the nearest supermarket. Every season affects what appears on the table. Spring brings certain vegetables. Summer offers fresh produce. Autumn provides harvest abundance. Winter forces greater dependence on stored supplies. As a servant, you become deeply aware of these cycles. You notice when food becomes scarce. You notice when harvests are generous. You notice when the quality of meals changes. The seasons are not abstract concepts. They are realities that shape everyday survival. Outside the castle walls, the surrounding estate is equally important. Fields stretch across the landscape. Farmers work the soil. Animals graze. Woodlands provide timber and fuel. Rivers offer fish and transportation. The castle may appear self-contained, but it depends upon an entire world beyond its walls. Servants often move between these worlds. Some carry messages. Some transport supplies. Some assist with agricultural work during busy periods. Life inside the castle is connected to life outside it in countless ways. Around midday, you may finally pause long enough to eat. The word pause is important. This is not a leisurely lunch. There are no extended breaks filled with relaxation. Instead, servants often eat quickly between duties. The meal itself is simple. Perhaps thick bread made from rye or barley. Perhaps pottage, a hearty mixture of vegetables and grains slowly cooked together. Perhaps a little cheese. Maybe some leftover meat if fortune smiles. Pottage appears frequently in medieval diets because it is practical. Ingredients can vary. It is filling. It stretches supplies. And it can remain simmering over a fire for long periods. To modern eyes, the menu may seem repetitive. To medieval people, reliability often matters more than variety. A dependable meal is a blessing, especially during difficult years. As you eat, conversation may briefly flourish among fellow servants. This is one of the rare moments when work slows enough for stories and gossip. Human beings remain human regardless of century. People discuss supervisors. They speculate about visitors. They share rumors. They laugh quietly about small mishaps. They complain about difficult tasks. Not too loudly, of course. Castles have walls. Walls often have ears. Still, these moments matter. Friendships can make hard work easier. A familiar face can transform an exhausting day. A shared joke can lighten a heavy burden. Histories often focus on kings and battles. Yet most people spend their lives among friends, co-workers, family members, and neighbors. Servants are no exception. The afternoon brings new challenges. Laundry, for example. Modern washing machines perform remarkable amounts of labor. Medieval servants have no such luxury. Every piece of clothing, every sheet, every towel, every tablecloth requires human effort. Water must be gathered. Soap must be prepared. Scrubbing must be done by hand. Rinsing follows. Drying follows that. The work is repetitive and physically demanding. Heavy wet fabric becomes surprisingly difficult to lift. Hands remain exposed to water for long periods. Cold weather makes the task even less pleasant. And castles generate enormous quantities of laundry. Noble households expect clean linens. Guests expect clean accommodations. Appearances matter. Servants ensure those appearances are maintained. The same principle applies throughout the castle. When visitors admire the household, they are often admiring unseen labor. The polished appearance of noble life depends upon countless hours of effort hidden behind the scenes. Perhaps nowhere is this more obvious than in the private chambers of the Lord and Lady. These rooms receive special attention. Beds must be prepared, furniture dusted, floors cleaned, personal belongings organized, privacy respected. Trust becomes especially important here. A servant granted access to private chambers occupies a sensitive position. Discretion is expected. Loyalty is valued. The household functions partly because certain servants prove dependable over time. Not everyone receives such responsibilities. Those who do often understand that a careless word can damage reputations and careers alike. As afternoon sunlight begins its slow descent, shadows stretch across courtyards and walls. The castle remains busy, but subtle changes signal that the day is moving forward. Deliveries are completed. Animals are fed. Work crews finish major tasks. Preparations begin for the evening meal. And once again, servants move through familiar routines that have repeated countless times before. For all its grandeur, castle life is built upon repetition. The same fires, the same corridors, the same meals, the same chores, the same expectations. Yet within that repetition, entire lives unfold. Young servants grow older. Friendships deepen. Skills improve. Stories accumulate. Years pass, and the castle continues standing above it all, watching generations come and go beneath its stone towers. As the afternoon slowly fades, the castle begins preparing for one of the most important events of the day, the evening meal. For nobles, it is a chance to gather, conduct business, entertain guests, and display status. For servants, it is another period of intense activity, requiring coordination, timing, and attention to detail. The kitchens become even busier than before. Large pieces of meat turn over open fires, pots simmer steadily, fresh bread is carried from ovens. The scent of herbs fills the air, smoke drifts upward toward darkened rafters that have witnessed generations of similar evenings. The heat can be overwhelming. Standing near the great hearth for hours means sweating even during cold weather. Faces become flushed, clothing absorbs smoke, hands grow rough from constant work. Yet there is little time to notice discomfort. Tasks continue. A castle meal is not simply food appearing on a table. It is the final result of an enormous chain of labor. Someone raised the animals. Someone harvested the grain. Someone gathered firewood. someone transporting supplies, someone prepared ingredients, someone cooked them, someone carried the finished dishes into the hall. Every bite eaten by a noble passes through many hands before reaching the table. As serving time approaches, servants move with increasing urgency. Platters are arranged, pitchers are filled, table linens are adjusted, benches are positioned, candles are lit as daylight weakens. The great hall gradually transforms into a scene of warmth and activity. Firelight dances across stone walls. Metal goblets reflect flickering light. Voices begin filling the space. Guests arrive. Officials take their places. Dogs settle beneath tables, hopeful and patient. The atmosphere feels alive. Yet even here, social rank governs everything. Where a person sits matters. Who receives food first matters. Who speaks and when they speak matters. The medieval world pays close attention to status. The arrangement of a meal silently communicates power, privilege, and importance. A servant learns these rules quickly, not because anyone hands over a convenient instruction manual, because mistakes are remembered. Serving the wrong person first may create embarrassment. Delivering food to the wrong seat may attract criticism. For this reason, experience becomes invaluable. Veteran servants know the routines instinctively. They understand the personalities of household members. They recognize visitors. They anticipate needs before requests are spoken aloud. In many ways, their knowledge helps maintain the smooth operation of castle life. The meal itself may last quite some time. Important conversations unfold. Agreements are discussed. News travels from distant regions. Stories are exchanged. Entertainment may occasionally accompany the gathering. Musicians sometimes perform. Travelers recount journeys. Visitors describe events occurring beyond the local countryside. For nobles, the hall serves as both dining room and social center. For servants, however, the evening meal represents work from beginning to end. While others sit, servants move. While others eat, servants carry. While others relax, servants remain attentive. This difference lies at the heart of medieval service. Much of your labor exists specifically so someone else can enjoy comfort. Once the meal concludes, another phase begins. Cleaning. And there is a great deal to clean. Tables must be cleared. Dishes collected. Spills removed. Benches returned. Food stored. Cooking equipment washed. Ash managed. Floors swept. The visible feast may last a few hours. The invisible work surrounding it lasts much longer. By now, daylight has almost disappeared. The castle changes character after sunset. Without electric lighting, darkness quickly becomes a dominant force. Candles and torches provide illumination, but only in limited areas. Many corridors remain dim. Some become nearly black. Shadows stretch across walls. The atmosphere grows quieter. More mysterious. More intimate. Modern people often underestimate how dark the pre-electric world could be. Outside the range of firelight, darkness feels substantial, almost physical. The stars above the castle appear brighter than many modern observers have ever seen. The night sky stretches overhead in extraordinary detail. Countless stars shimmer above towers and battlements. For a servant crossing the courtyard after dark, this view may be one of the day's few rewards. A brief moment to glance upward. A brief reminder that a larger world exists beyond chores and responsibilities. Not all evening tasks happen indoors. The stable workers remain busy. Horses require care regardless of the hour. Feed must be distributed. Stalls cleaned. Equipment inspected. Animals checked for injuries. Horses represent valuable assets. Military strength, transportation, communication, and prestige all depend upon them. The people who care for these animals perform demanding work that often receives little recognition. Yet everyone notices when something goes wrong. The same principle applies throughout the castle. Success often goes unnoticed. Failure rarely does. As darkness deepens, castle security becomes increasingly important. Gates are monitored carefully. Watchmen patrol walls. Guards remain alert for potential threats. Although many nights pass peacefully, uncertainty is part of medieval life. Bandits, rival lords, political disputes, and regional conflicts all exist within the broader landscape. The castle is designed partly for defense. Its walls, towers, and gates serve practical purposes. To a servant, these defenses may feel reassuring. They may also feel restrictive. Castle walls protect. They also confine. For some servants, entire months pass without traveling far beyond the estate. Their world becomes centered on familiar routines and familiar surroundings. The castle functions almost like a small community. A world within walls. Within that world, relationships matter enormously. As evening work continues, servants interact with one another constantly. Some friendships become lifelong bonds. Others remain practical alliances. People help one another when possible. Information is exchanged. Warnings are shared. Advice passes from experienced workers to newcomers. Learning often happens through observation rather than formal instruction. A young servant watches older servants. Gradually, skills develop. How to carry heavy loads efficiently. How to avoid offending a supervisor. How to move quietly through crowded spaces. How to complete tasks quickly without sacrificing quality. These lessons accumulate over time. Small pieces of knowledge passed from one generation to another. Many servants begin work at a young age. What starts as unfamiliar labor slowly becomes second nature. Years later, they may find themselves teaching someone else. Such cycles repeat endlessly. The castle endures because knowledge endures. As the night grows later, fatigue begins settling into muscles and bones. Hours of physical labor leave their mark. Hands ache. Feet ache. Shoulders ache. Backs ache. There is nothing unusual about this. Physical exhaustion is a common companion in medieval life. Most work depends directly upon human strength. Machines perform few tasks. Animals assist with some. But people accomplish the majority. The body becomes the primary tool. And tools wear down with use. Despite the fatigue, some work remains. Fires must be checked. Doors secured. Supplies organized. Preparations made for tomorrow. Castle life operates on continuity. Today's tasks influence tomorrow's workload. A neglected chore can create larger problems later. Responsibility, therefore, extends beyond the present moment. Eventually, however, even the busiest day approaches its end. The great hall grows quiet. Conversations fade. Guests retire. The kitchens settle. Corridors empty. One by one, servants finish their final duties. The castle exhales. Its endless activity slows. Not completely. Never completely, but enough. Enough for weary workers to seek rest. You make your way back toward your sleeping quarters. The same stone passages that bustled with activity earlier now feel calm. Firelight flickers softly against walls. The air remains cool. Some servants speak quietly. Others are already asleep. The long day is finally ending. Tomorrow will look remarkably similar. The same responsibilities. The same routines. The same expectations. Yet for now, none of that matters. For now, there is simply the relief of rest. You lower yourself onto your simple bedding. The straw rustles softly beneath you. Your muscles protest briefly before beginning to relax. Around you, familiar sounds return. Soft breathing, distant footsteps, the crackle of a dying fire, the whisper of wind against ancient stone. The castle continues standing in the darkness, just as it has for years. And as sleep slowly approaches, you become one small part of its story. Sleep comes quickly after a day of labor, but it rarely lasts uninterrupted. Medieval castles are not quiet places. Even in the deepest hours of the night, sounds drift through the darkness. A horse shifts in its stall. A guard calls out from the wall. Rain taps against stone. Wind pushes through narrow openings. Somewhere a door creaks. Somewhere else, a servant rises early for a duty that cannot wait until morning. Life inside a castle never truly stops. It simply slows. Then, before long, another day begins. The cycle repeats so consistently that seasons often become the primary way people measure time. Spring feels different from summer. Summer feels different from autumn. Autumn feels very different from winter. Each season transforms both the castle and the lives of the people serving within it. Spring arrives gradually. The countryside awakens first. Fields become greener. Trees begin showing new leaves. Birdsong returns after the quieter months of winter. The air carries a freshness that has been absent for some time. For servants, spring often brings a sense of relief. Not because work becomes easier. It rarely does. But because winter is finally loosening its grip. The medieval winter can be difficult to imagine for modern people. Today, most homes provide reliable heating. Warm clothing is readily available. Travel remains possible throughout much of the year. Inside a medieval castle, winter is another matter entirely. Stone walls that seemed merely cool during autumn become relentlessly cold. Frost sometimes appears inside certain rooms. Water may freeze. Strong winds find their way through cracks and openings. Every source of warmth becomes precious. During these colder months, servants spend enormous amounts of time managing fires. Wood must be gathered, transporting, stored and burned. The demand feels endless. A fire that dies at the wrong time can leave an important room uncomfortable or unusable. Maintaining heat becomes a daily battle. And yet even large fireplaces struggle against the chill of massive stone structures. Many medieval castles were designed primarily for defense rather than comfort. Their thick walls offered protection against enemies. Unfortunately, they also retained cold remarkably well. Servants experience this reality constantly. A winter morning may begin with numb fingers. A winter evening may end with tired workers crowding close to available warmth. Simple comforts gain tremendous value. A warm meal, a functioning fire, a dry blanket. These things matter very much. When spring finally returns, people notice. The entire atmosphere changes. Courtyards become more active. Travel becomes easier. Work outdoors increases. Supplies move more freely. The mood often improves. Summer brings its own challenges. The days grow longer. Work begins earlier. The castle becomes busier as travel and trade increase. Visitors arrive more frequently. Markets thrive. Agricultural labor reaches intense levels across the surrounding lands. For servants, summer often means more activity rather than less. Longer daylight hours create more opportunities for work. Mori guests require more preparation. Mori food must be handled. Mori cleaning must be done. Mori supplies must be organized. The pace remains relentless. Yet summer also offers small pleasures. Fresh fruit appears. Gardens flourish. The countryside becomes vibrant. Even a servant carrying out daily duties may occasionally appreciate the beauty surrounding the castle. A field glowing beneath afternoon sunlight. Wildflowers along a path. The scent of fresh-cut hay drifting through warm air. Such moments are brief, but they exist. Autumn follows, and with it comes one of the most important periods of the year. Harvest season. The success or failure of harvests influences nearly every aspect of medieval life. Good harvests create security. Poor harvests create anxiety. The castle watches these developments carefully. Barns fill with grain. Food stores are evaluated. Supplies for winter are prepared. Everyone understands what is at stake. Unlike the modern world, where food often arrives from distant regions through vast transportation networks, medieval communities depend heavily upon local production. A bad season cannot always be solved by ordering supplies from elsewhere. Preparation matters. Storage matters. Planning matters. Servants participate in many of these efforts. Barrels are moved. Storerooms organized. Inventories checked. Preserved foods prepared. The approaching winter influences countless decisions. Throughout all these seasons, one thing remains constant. The castle's dependence upon labor. Everything requires work. Everything. The floors do not clean themselves. The fires do not feed themselves. The food does not cook itself. The horses do not care for themselves. The walls do not repair themselves. The smooth appearance of castle life rests upon an enormous foundation of effort. And much of that effort comes from people whose names history rarely records. Modern visitors often remember castles through images. Towering walls, great halls, colorful banners, armored knights. These images are not entirely wrong, but they tell only part of the story. The hidden story belongs to workers, servants, laborers, craftsmen, cooks, stable hands, laundry workers, messengers, gatekeepers, people whose daily actions allowed the visible world of nobility to exist. Without them, the castle would simply be an empty shell of stone. One area where this hidden labor becomes especially obvious is cleanliness. Or rather, the constant struggle against dirt. A medieval castle accumulates dirt with remarkable efficiency. People walk in from muddy roads. Animals move through courtyards. Fireplaces produce ash. Cooking creates spills. Rain carries mud indoors. Dust settles everywhere. Maintaining cleanliness is not a one-time task. It is a continuous process. Floors require sweeping. Rushes spread across the ground must be replaced. Tables need wiping. Walls collect soot. Clothing gathers stains. The battle never ends. In fact, many servants spend entire careers fighting an endless war against mess. And despite their efforts, medieval standards of cleanliness differ considerably from modern expectations. This is not because people enjoy living in filth. Far from it. Most people appreciate cleanliness. The challenge lies in the available technology. Cleaning products are limited. Water must be transporting manually. Soap exists but remains relatively precious. Every improvement requires labor. Sometimes a great deal of labor. Even bathing is different from modern habits. Contrary to certain popular myths, medieval people are not entirely unfamiliar with washing. They do wash. However, bathing practices vary significantly depending upon location, wealth, season, and circumstance. Heating large quantities of water requires effort. Privacy may be limited. Facilities may be basic. For servants, opportunities for thorough bathing are often less frequent than many modern people would prefer. After a day of hard work, sweat, smoke, and dirt become familiar companions. It is simply part of life. Yet people adapt. Humans are remarkably adaptable creatures. They become accustomed to conditions that might surprise later generations. This adaptability appears throughout medieval society. People accept realities because they have known little else. Cold winters, physical labor, limited privacy, simple diets, strict social hierarchies. These things are not unusual. They are normals. And normality shapes expectations. A servant rarely wakes each morning comparing life to a future that does not yet exist. There is no modern apartment to miss. No central heating to remember. No internet connection to long for. Life is understood through the standards of the time. That does not mean servants never complain. Of course they do. People complain in every century. But complaints usually focus on immediate concerns. A difficult supervisor. An exhausting task. A poor meal. An unfair situation. Not on technologies that have not yet been invented. This perspective helps us understand medieval life more clearly. The people living it are not waiting for the future. They are simply living in the present, doing the best they can within the world they know. And for a servant in a castle, that world remains demanding, structured, exhausting, and occasionally rewarding in ways both large and small. As another evening approaches and shadows begin stretching across the courtyard once again, the familiar rhythm continues. The castle stands. The fires burn. The workers labor. And life moves forward one day at a time. As the years pass, a servant comes to know the castle in a way that few others ever will. A visiting noble may admire its towers. A traveling merchant may remember its gatehouse. A knight may think about its defenses. But a servant learns its secrets. Not grand secrets hidden in locked chests or whispered in political meetings. Different kinds of secrets. The secret of which staircase creaks the loudest. The secret of which door sticks during wet weather. The secret of where sunlight reaches first on a winter morning. The secret of which fireplace draws smoke properly and which one constantly fills a room with irritation. These small pieces of knowledge accumulate over time. Years of experience transform the castle from a confusing maze into something almost familiar enough to navigate with closed eyes. A new servant can become lost. An old servant rarely does. Castles are often far larger and more complicated than modern people imagine. Passageways twist unexpectedly. Staircases connect different levels. Storage rooms hide behind thick doors. Workshops occupy corners visitors rarely see. Servants' routes frequently differ from the routes used by nobles. The same building can feel like two separate worlds, depending on where you spend your time. Above stairs, there are ceremonies, meals, guests, and displays of status. Below stairs, there is labor. The two worlds depend upon each other, yet they remain surprisingly separate. A servant may spend years in a castle without ever feeling fully part of the noble world that exists only a few rooms away. That separation is intentional. Medieval society is deeply structured. Everyone is expected to understand their place. Modern people often value social mobility and personal freedom. The medieval world tends to value stability, duty, and hierarchy. This does not mean people are happy with their position. Far from it. Ambition exists in every century. So does frustration. But opportunities for dramatic change are often limited. Many servants are born into circumstances that strongly influence the course of their lives. A person born into a wealthy noble family begins life with advantages that most servants can scarcely imagine. Meanwhile, a servant's future is often shaped by practical realities. Work, reputation, connections, skill, good fortune, and occasionally misfortune. Yet even within these limitations, individual lives can vary greatly. Some servants remain in service for only a few years. Others spend decades within the same household. Some earn positions of trust and responsibility. Others move between employers in search of better opportunities. The medieval world is not completely static. People move. Circumstances change. Fortunes rise and fall. The process is simply slower and more uncertain than many people experience today. One important source of opportunity comes through skill. A servant who becomes highly capable can sometimes improve their situation significantly. Consider the castle cook. Preparing food for a noble household is no simple matter. It requires organization, experience, and judgment. A skilled cook becomes valuable. The same is true for stewards, craftsmen, stable masters, and other specialists. Knowledge has value. Reliability has value. Competence has value. A household that functions well depends heavily upon capable workers. Of course, skill alone does not guarantee comfort. Even respected servants work hard. Very hard. But expertise can create greater security. And security is a precious thing in the medieval world. For many people, life contains a constant awareness of uncertainty. Illness can appear suddenly. Harvests can fail. Conflicts can disrupt entire regions. Economic conditions can shift. Few safety nets exist. As a result, stable employment within a large household often carries significant advantages. Food is generally available. Shelter exists. Work is consistent. The conditions may be demanding, but predictability has value. Especially during difficult times. Illness presents one of the greatest challenges. Modern medicine has transformed human life in ways that are easy to overlook. For medieval servants, however, sickness can be frightening. Even relatively minor illnesses may become serious. Injuries that seem manageable today can lead to complications. Medical knowledge exists, but it remains limited by modern standards. Treatments vary widely. Some help, Some do little. Some may even worsen a situation. A servant who becomes too ill to work faces genuine difficulties. Recovery takes time. Time can be expensive. This reality adds another layer of uncertainty to everyday life. Yet despite these hardships, medieval people continue living, working, laughing, arguing, and building relationships. Human nature remains remarkably familiar across centuries. Spend enough time observing castle servants, and many modern stereotypes begin to fade. These are not distant historical figures moving through a museum display. They are people. People who worry about the future. People who feel tired after long days. People who enjoy companionship. People who become frustrated. People who hope for better circumstances. People who occasionally find happiness in unexpected places. Perhaps nowhere is this more visible than during celebrations. Life inside a castle is not one endless sequence of chores. Special occasions break the routine. Religious festivals, weddings, important visits, successful harvests, seasonal celebrations. These events create moments of excitement. The atmosphere changes noticeably. Preparations begin days in advance. Additional food arrives. Decorations appear. Visitors gather. The castle becomes busier than usual. For servants, celebrations often mean more work. Sometimes much more work. Yet they also create opportunities to experience something different. Music fills halls. Stories circulate. Extra food may become available. The ordinary rhythm of life briefly shifts. Even exhausting preparations can carry a sense of anticipation. After all, humans naturally look forward to special occasions. That tendency has existed for a very long time. Music itself plays an interesting role in castle life. The medieval world is far from silent. People sing. Musicians perform. Religious services include music. Festivals feature entertainment. Travelers bring songs from distant places. Without recorded sound, every performance exists only in the moment. Once the music ends, it survives primarily in memory. Imagine hearing a talented musician in a great hall illuminated by firelight. The notes echo against stone walls. The audience listens. The performance feels immediate and alive. No recordings exist. No replay button exists. The moment happens once. Then it becomes part of the past. In some ways, this gives music a special quality. A rarity. A preciousness. A servant pausing briefly during an evening celebration might remember such moments for years. Not because they transform daily life, but because they interrupt it. They offer something different, something memorable. The same is true of stories. Medieval people love stories. Tales of heroes. Tales of saints. Tales of distant lands. Tales of foolish mistakes. Tales that make listeners laugh. Tales that inspire wonder. Long before television, movies, podcasts, or streaming services, storytelling serves as entertainment, education, and social connection. People gather to listen. People gather to share. A servant sitting near a fire after a long day may hear stories that travel across generations. Some are true. Some are exaggerated. Some are probably impossible. That rarely matters. The enjoyment comes from the telling. And so the years continue passing. One season follows another. One winter yields to spring. One generation replaces the next. The castle remains. Its walls weather storms. Its towers watch the countryside. Its halls witness countless ordinary days. And among all the nobles, knights, officials and visitors who come and go, the servants continue their work. Lighting fires, carrying water, preparing meals, cleaning rooms, maintaining the rhythm of life that allows the entire household to function. It is demanding work, often exhausting work, frequently overlooked work. Yet without it, the castle could not survive. And perhaps that is one of the most important truths about life as a servant in a medieval castle. The grand story of history is often built upon the efforts of people whose names were never written down. As time passes, you begin to notice something curious about life inside a medieval castle. The grand events that historians often describe, the battles, treaties, royal visits, and political disputes, are surprisingly rare in the daily experience of most servants. What fills the majority of life is routine. Endless, familiar, predictable routine. The same bell marking the start of the day. The same corridors beneath your feet. The same fireplaces demanding fuel. The same kitchens demanding labor. The same faces appearing each morning and disappearing each night. For many servants, life is measured less by famous events and more by ordinary repetitions. A particularly harsh winter. An unusually abundant harvest. The arrival of a new steward. The departure of a longtime friend. A wedding. A funeral. A birth. These become the landmarks of memory. And in truth, this is not so different from modern life. Most people today also remember personal milestones more vividly than major political developments. Human beings experience history through everyday life. Servants are no exception. One aspect of castle life that often surprises modern observers is how much attention is devoted to reputation. A good reputation can be extraordinarily valuable. A poor reputation can create lasting difficulties. Within the household, people talk. They always have. The kitchens hear everything. The stables hear almost as much. Messages travel through conversation long before they travel through official announcements. A servant known for honesty may receive greater trust. A servant known for reliability may gain more responsibility. A servant known for carelessness may find opportunities becoming scarce. Trust is currency. And like all valuable things, it takes time to build and only moments to damage. This is especially important in a world where written records exist, but are far less common than today. Personal recommendations matter. Word of mouth matters. Character matters. If a servant hopes to remain employed, these things can influence the course of an entire life. Of course, maintaining a good reputation does not guarantee an easy existence. Castle life remains physically demanding. In fact, many tasks become more difficult as servants grow older. The body remembers years of labor. A young servant may carry heavy buckets without much thought. An older servant feels every step. A young worker may climb endless staircases with ease. An older worker notices aching knees. Castles are full of stairs. More stairs than many modern people would appreciate after carrying loads all day. Water travels up them. Firewood travels up them. Food travels up them. Laundry travels up them. And unfortunately, gravity offers no assistance when carrying things upward. Over the years, these physical demands leave their mark. Hands become rough. Shoulders broaden. Muscles strengthen. but wear accumulates as well. Life expectancy in the medieval world is often misunderstood. Many people assume everyone died young. The reality is more complicated. If a person survived childhood, they might live for many years. Yet hard labor, illness, poor nutrition during difficult periods, and limited medical care could all affect long-term health. A servant who reached old age carried the evidence of a lifetime of work. Even so, older servants often possessed something extremely valuable. Knowledge. Not book knowledge necessarily. Practical knowledge. The kind that only experience can provide. They knew how to handle difficult personalities. They knew how to solve everyday problems. They knew how the household functioned. They remembered previous harvests, previous winters, previous crises. In many ways, they served as living archives of castle life. A new steward might arrive. A lord might change. A generation might pass. Yet an experienced servant could remember decades of household history. Such people often became important sources of advice. Not because of official authority, because of accumulated wisdom. As evening settles over the castle once more, imagine walking through the courtyard after years of service. The stones beneath your feet are familiar. The sounds are familiar. Even the smells are familiar. Smoke drifting from chimneys. The scent of horses from nearby stables. Fresh bread emerging from ovens. Damp earth after rain. These sensory details become woven into memory. A castle is not simply a workplace. For many servants, it becomes home. Not always a comfortable home. Not always a happy home. But home nonetheless. People spend years here. Sometimes decades. They build friendships. They fall in love. They raise children. They mourn losses. They celebrate small victories. Life unfolds within these walls. One of the most interesting aspects of medieval service is the way it creates communities. Modern people often imagine servants as isolated individuals carrying out separate tasks. The reality is usually far more social. Workers depend upon one another constantly. The kitchen depends upon deliveries. The hall depends upon the kitchen. The stables support transportation. The laundry workers support nearly everyone. Each role connects to others. This interconnectedness creates relationships. Some are friendly. Some are tense. Some involve rivalry. Some involve loyalty. Human communities are rarely simple. The castle community is no exception. Arguments happen. Misunderstandings happen. Jealousies appear. But cooperation remains necessary. The household functions because people work together, even when they do not always agree. This cooperation becomes especially important during difficult times. Consider a severe storm. Strong winds batter the castle walls. Rain pours relentlessly. Supplies must be protected. Leaks must be managed. Animals must be secured. Fires must remain lit. Everyone contributes. Or consider a period of shortage. Food stores become more carefully managed. Resources become more valuable. Waste becomes less acceptable. The household adapts together. Shared challenges often strengthen social bonds. People remember who helped during difficult moments. Such memories can last for years. Despite all these realities, it is important not to romanticize servant life. Castles may appear beautiful today. Tourists walk through restored halls and admire impressive architecture. Photographs capture towers against blue skies. The reality experienced by servants is far less glamorous. Most days involve work. Hard work. The kind of work that leaves little energy at the end of the evening. The kind of work performed regardless of weather. The kind of work that must be completed whether someone feels motivated or not. Yet neither should we imagine a life composed entirely of misery. Human beings are remarkably capable of finding meaning within difficult circumstances. A shared meal, a conversation with a friend, a successful task completed well, a festival, a song, a story beside the fire. These moments matter, perhaps more than we sometimes realize. History often focuses on extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. But most lives are built from ordinary moments. And a servant's life is full of them. The warmth of a hearth on a cold morning. The relief of sitting down after hours of labor. The satisfaction of a job completed properly. The comfort of familiar faces. The beauty of sunlight falling across a courtyard. These experiences may never appear in official records. Yet they form the texture of everyday existence. As another night settles over the castle, the towers stand quietly against the dark sky. The fires burn lower. The hall grows silent. The kitchens finally rest. Beyond the walls, the countryside disappears into darkness. Above, countless stars shine with a clarity rarely seen in the modern world. And somewhere within the castle, a servant prepares for sleep, knowing that tomorrow will bring more work, more routines, more responsibilities, but also another day among familiar people in a familiar place. A life that may seem distant to us now, yet remains deeply human all the same. As the years move quietly onward, there are moments when the rhythm of castle life is interrupted by something unusual. Perhaps a messenger arrives at great speed, his horse covered in sweat from a long journey. Perhaps important guests appear unexpectedly at the gate. Perhaps news spreads through the household that a noble relative is coming to visit. Whenever such events occur, the castle seems to awaken in a different way. The familiar routine remains, but the intensity changes. Preparations begin immediately. Rooms must be cleaned more thoroughly than usual. Fresh linens are brought out. Extra food is prepared. Additional firewood is gathered. Every corner of the household becomes involved. For servants, an important visitor rarely means excitement alone. It means work, a great deal of work. A noble guest may only see the polished result. The warm room, the prepared bed, the impressive meal, the welcoming atmosphere. But hidden behind those comforts are countless hours of effort. Someone scrubbed the floors. Someone carried the water. Someone cleaned the chamber. Someone baked the bread. Someone hauled the firewood. Someone stayed awake later than usual to make everything ready. The guest sees the castle at its best. The servants know what it took to create that impression. This hidden labor is one of the defining features of service. The better the work is performed, the less noticeable it often becomes. Success appears effortless. Failure becomes visible immediately. A room that is perfectly clean attracts little attention. A room that is dirty attracts plenty. This strange reality follows servants throughout their lives. Their greatest achievements often appear invisible. Yet the household depends upon them completely. During especially important visits, the castle may host lavish meals. Large quantities of food are prepared. Additional tables are arranged. Entertainment may be organized. Musicians perform. Stories are shared. Wine and ale flow more freely. For nobles, such occasions provide opportunities to strengthen relationships and display wealth. For servants, they create long days and short nights. The work often begins before dawn and continues long after most guests have retired. And yet these occasions also bring variety. New faces, new stories, news from distant regions. In an age when travel is slow and information moves gradually, visitors become important sources of knowledge. A traveler from another region may describe unfamiliar customs. A merchant may discuss markets far away. A knight may share stories of distant campaigns. Even servants sometimes hear fragments of these conversations. The medieval world can feel both vast and surprisingly connected. News spreads slowly, but it spreads. Information passes from person to person, town to town, castle to castle. Long before newspapers, radio, or the internet, human conversation forms a living network. Of course, not all news is accurate. People exaggerate. People misunderstand. People repeat rumors. Some things never change. A story may grow considerably more dramatic by the time it reaches the castle kitchen. Yet even exaggerated tales provide entertainment, especially during long evenings. Stories help make sense of a world that often feels uncertain. And uncertainty is a constant companion in medieval life. The weather may change unexpectedly. Harvests may succeed or fail. Political alliances may shift. Conflicts may erupt. Disease may appear. Few people possess complete control over their future. Instead, life often requires adaptation. The ability to adjust becomes one of the most valuable skills a person can possess. Servants learn this lesson well. Every day presents small challenges. A fire refuses to stay lit. A delivery arrives late. A horse becomes difficult. A room requires unexpected attention. A guest requests something unusual. Problems emerge constantly. The household functions because people solve them. One task at a time. One day at a time. This practical problem-solving shapes the mentality of many servants. There is little benefit in dwelling endlessly on difficulties. The work still needs to be done. The water still needs carrying. The food still needs preparing. The fire still needs tending. Action matters. Complaints alone accomplish little. This attitude does not eliminate frustration. Far from it. Everyone experiences difficult days. Everyone experiences moments of exhaustion. But medieval life often rewards persistence. The ability to continue despite discomfort becomes a valuable quality. As seasons pass and years accumulate, another reality becomes increasingly noticeable. The castle itself changes. Not dramatically overnight. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. A section of wall requires repair. A roof is replaced. A room is renovated. Furniture is added or removed. Buildings expand. Structures age. Even the strongest castle is never truly finished. Maintenance is constant. Stone may seem permanent, but weather works patiently. Rain falls. Wind blows. Winter freezes. Summer heats. Year after year. The castle survives because people care for it. Much like the household itself. This creates an interesting relationship between servants and the building. They spend so much time maintaining it that they become intimately familiar with its condition. A visitor notices the grand appearance. A servant notices the loose hinge, the worn stair, the damaged roof tile, the draft beneath a door. Practical knowledge often reveals details invisible to outsiders. The same principle applies to the noble household. Visitors see status and ceremony. Servants see habits. They know who wakes early, who prefers certain foods, who dislikes particular arrangements, who treats workers kindly, who inspires nervousness whenever they enter a room. Such observations rarely appear in official histories, yet they shape daily life. Living closely alongside others inevitably creates familiarity. Even within a highly structured society, one of the quieter aspects of servant life involves observation. Much of the day is spent watching fires, watching food, watching animals, watching guests, watching for problems, watching for opportunities to assist. Attention becomes a professional skill. A servant who notices a problem early may prevent greater difficulties later. A servant who anticipates needs may earn appreciation. Success often depends less upon dramatic action and more upon careful awareness. The best workers frequently notice things others miss. And over time, this habit of observation influences how they see the world. Details matter. Small details. The weather changing. A horse behaving strangely. A visitor appearing anxious. A storage room running low on supplies. Minor observations can become important. Life teaches attentiveness. As another evening settles across the castle, imagine standing briefly in the courtyard after completing your duties. The sky above is painted with the fading colors of sunset. Orange softens into gold. Gold fades into blue. The first stars begin appearing overhead. For a few moments, the castle feels almost peaceful. The noise of the day diminishes. The rush slows. The demands lessen. Not entirely, but enough. Enough to notice the evening air. Enough to hear distant birds settling for the night. Enough to appreciate the rare stillness. Moments like these do not erase the hardships of servant life. They do not lighten tomorrow's workload, but they provide balance. A reminder that even within demanding circumstances, beauty still exists. A quiet sky, a warm fire, a familiar voice, a shared laugh. Small things, yet often the things people remember most. And so another day comes to an end. One among thousands. One that may never appear in any historical record. Yet one that is every bit as real as the lives of kings, queens, and knights. Because history is not only made by famous people. It is also made by those who rise before dawn, work until nightfall, and keep the world functioning without ever expecting recognition. There are certain mornings when the castle feels older than usual. Not physically older, of course. The stones have not changed overnight. The towers still rise above the landscape. The walls remain where they have stood for years, perhaps even generations. Yet sometimes, especially in the quiet moments before dawn, you become aware of how many lives have passed through these corridors. How many footsteps have crossed these floors? How many hands have opened these doors? How many servants have performed the same duties you perform now? The realization can be strangely comforting. Long before your arrival, someone carried water along this passage. Someone swept this floor. Someone tended this fire. Someone prepared meals in this kitchen. And long after you are gone, someone else will likely do the same. The castle endures. The people chain. In many ways, service becomes part of a chain stretching across generations. Knowledge passes from one worker to another. Habits survive. Traditions continue. The daily rhythm remains remarkably consistent. A young servant entering the household often learns directly from someone older and more experienced. Instructions are rarely delivered through books. Most learning happens through observation. Watch carefully. Listen closely. Repeat what works. Avoid repeating mistakes. This method has existed for countless generations. And despite its simplicity, it is often effective. The new servant learns where supplies are kept. Learns how much wood a particular hearth requires. Learns which tasks demand urgency and which can wait. Learns how to navigate the complicated network of responsibilities that keeps the castle functioning. At first, everything feels overwhelming. Eventually, it becomes familiar. The transformation happens gradually, almost without notice. One day, you realize you no longer need directions. You already know. You belong to the rhythm of the place. Of course, belonging does not necessarily mean comfort. Some parts of servant life remain difficult regardless of experience. Weather, for example. Weather influences nearly everything. A week of heavy rain turns roads into mud. Deliveries become slower. Travel becomes unpleasant. Outdoor work becomes harder. A particularly cold winter increases demand for fuel. A dry summer may create worries about crops. The modern world often shields people from many environmental challenges. The medieval world cannot. Nature remains a powerful force. A force that commands attention. People watch the sky carefully. They notice changing winds. They notice approaching storms. They notice signs of seasonal shifts. The weather is not background scenery. It is part of daily life, particularly for those whose work depends upon it. A servant carrying supplies across a courtyard during a winter storm feels the reality of weather quite directly. The cold bites at exposed skin. The wind pushes against heavy clothing. Snow collects in corners and along walls. Tasks still need completing. The castle does not pause simply because conditions are unpleasant. This reality teaches resilience. Not the dramatic resilience celebrated in heroic stories. A quieter kind. The resilience of continuing with necessary work despite discomfort. The resilience of adaptation. The resilience of routine. Many medieval people possess this quality because daily life requires it. And nowhere is this more obvious than during times of genuine hardship. Every household eventually faces difficult periods. A poor harvest, an outbreak of illness, economic strain, political uncertainty, unexpected losses. The castle may appear strong from the outside, but it remains connected to the wider world. Events beyond the walls can affect everyone within them. During such times, servants often experience the consequences directly. Resources may become more limited. Workloads may increase. Tensions may rise. Yet these moments also reveal something important about communities. People frequently depend upon one another. Shared challenges create shared experiences. Individuals who might otherwise focus only on their own responsibilities become aware of larger concerns. The success of the household affects everyone. Its difficulties affect everyone as well. This sense of interconnectedness runs through much of medieval life. Modern society often emphasizes individual achievement. The medieval world tends to emphasize collective function. A castle succeeds because many people contribute. No single person performs every task. No single person can. The baker needs grain. The cook needs ingredients. The stable workers need supplies. The household officials need information. Everyone depends upon someone else. These connections form a complicated web of relationships. Most of the time, the system works. Not perfectly. No human system ever does. But well enough. Well enough for daily life to continue. Well enough for the castle to survive year after year. As servants grow older, many begin noticing changes not only in themselves, but in the generations around them. Children who once ran through courtyards become workers. Young workers become experienced workers. Experienced workers become elders. Time moves quietly but steadily. Few people notice it day by day. Everyone notices it eventually. Perhaps a young kitchen assistant reminds you of someone who worked there years ago. Perhaps a new stable hand asks the same questions you once asked. Perhaps you find yourself giving advice you once received from someone else. The cycle continues. The faces change. The lessons remain. There is something deeply human about this process. Every generation inherits knowledge. Every generation passes knowledge forward. Much of history survives through these ordinary exchanges. Not through famous speeches. Not through royal decrees. But through practical instruction. Through conversation. Through experience. Through memory. As evening approaches once more, the castle begins settling into its familiar rhythm. Fires are checked. Animals are fed. Rooms are prepared. The routines repeat. Yet repetition does not necessarily mean monotony. Within familiar patterns, countless small variations exist. Different weather. Different visitors. Different conversations. Different challenges. Life rarely stays exactly the same. It simply moves within recognizable boundaries. And perhaps that is why so many servants become deeply attached to the places where they work. The castle may demand much from them, but it also provides structure, predictability, community, a sense of place. For people living in an uncertain world, those things carry real value. Imagine standing near one of the castle windows as darkness gathers outside. The countryside stretches away beneath the fading light. Fields, forests, roads, villages, a vast landscape extending beyond the horizon. Some servants spend most of their lives within a relatively small portion of that world. Others travel occasionally. A few travel quite far. But regardless of distance, the castle remains a central point around which daily life revolves. It is workplace, home, community, responsibility, and for many, identity. The stones themselves seem almost permanent, yet they are surrounded by lives that are constantly changing. Lives marked by effort, loyalty, friendship, hardship, and perseverance. Lives that rarely appear in grand historical accounts, yet lives without which those accounts could never have existed. Because while nobles may receive much of the attention, castles are ultimately sustained by ordinary people doing extraordinary amounts of work. People who rise before dawn. People who labor through every season. People who keep fires burning, meals cooking, rooms clean, and households functioning. People whose names may be forgotten, but whose contributions remain woven into the very fabric of history. As the years drift onward, one of the most valuable things a servant can possess is not strength, speed, or even skill. It is familiarity. Familiarity with the household. Familiarity with the routines. Familiarity with the countless little details that make daily life run smoothly. A new servant may know how to work hard. An experienced servant knows exactly what kind of work needs to be done before anyone asks. That difference matters. Imagine entering the kitchen before dawn. A newcomer sees a room. An experienced servant sees 100 tasks waiting to happen. The fire needs attention. The bread dough needs checking. The water barrels need replenishing. Certain ingredients must be prepared. Specific equipment must be cleaned. The experienced worker notices all of this almost instantly. Years of repetition have trained the eye. The same is true throughout the castle. Knowledge accumulates quietly. Where spare candles are stored. Which rooms become cold first in winter. Which horses require extra attention. Which doors tend to swell during rainy weather. Which members of the household prefer early meals. Which guests are likely to arrive with unusual requests. These details may seem insignificant on their own. Together, they form the hidden knowledge that keeps a household functioning efficiently. And efficiency matters. A medieval castle is not merely a home. It is an institution, a center of administration, a military stronghold, a social hub, a workplace. At times, it can feel almost like a small town contained within walls. Dozens of people move through its spaces every day. Sometimes hundreds. Each person has responsibilities. Each responsibility depends upon others. The complexity is easy to overlook. Modern visitors often admire the architecture. The towers, the battlements, the thick stone walls. But the true challenge of castle life is not constructing the building. It is operating it. Every single day. Without interruption. Without modern technology. Without electricity. Without running water. Without central heating. Without mechanized transport. When viewed through that lens, the achievements of ordinary workers become remarkably impressive. They accomplish an enormous amount with relatively simple tools. A broom, a bucket, a knife, a cart, a shovel, a hammer. Many medieval tasks rely more upon labor than machinery. Human effort fills the gap. This reality becomes especially clear during large projects. Perhaps a section of wall requires repair. Perhaps a roof has been damaged by a storm. Perhaps new storage facilities are needed. Such work demands coordination. Materials must be gathered. Tools prepared. Workers organized. Food provided. The castle is constantly being maintained, repaired, and improved. Not dramatically. Incrementally. One task at a time. The process never truly ends. Even the strongest structure slowly wears under the influence of weather and time. Maintaining it requires vigilance. The same can be said for the household itself. A successful castle does not simply happen. It is created daily through countless acts of care and attention. Many of these acts are so ordinary that they rarely receive recognition. Consider lighting. Today, darkness is often optional. A switch transforms night into brightness. For a medieval servant, light requires preparation. Candles must be made or acquired. Torches must be maintained. Fireplaces must be tended. Every source of illumination depends upon resources and labor. When evening approaches, the transition feels more significant than it does in the modern world. Daylight fades. Shadows lengthen. The available space shrinks to wherever firelight reaches. Rooms beyond that glow seem distant and mysterious. The castle changes character. During the day, it feels active and practical. At night, it becomes quieter, more reflective, more intimate. The sounds become clearer. Footsteps echo differently. Voices carry farther. A crackling fire can dominate an otherwise silent room. For servants finishing late duties, these nighttime hours often reveal a side of the castle that visitors rarely experience. The great hall stands nearly empty. The kitchens grow calm. The constant movement of the day finally slows. Not completely, but enough to notice. Enough to breathe. Enough to think. Moments of quiet are surprisingly valuable. Because servant life is often filled with motion. Motion from morning until evening. Carrying, cleaning, cooking, organizing, repairing, vetching, delivering. The list seems endless, and yet people adapt to it. Human beings possess an extraordinary ability to normalize routine. Tasks that once seemed exhausting eventually become ordinary. Movements become automatic. Skills become instinctive. The difficult becomes familiar. This adaptation is one reason medieval households function as effectively as they do. Workers develop expertise through repetition. Not because the work becomes easy, because they become capable. There is a difference. Capability grows slowly. One day at a time. One task at a time. 1 year at a time. Eventually, a servant may find themselves responsible for training others. The realization can be surprising. The nervous newcomer who once struggled to remember instructions has become the experienced worker offering them. Time has quietly transformed student into teacher. The cycle continues. Knowledge passes forward. The household endures. Beyond the castle walls, meanwhile, the wider world keeps moving. Roads carry travelers. Markets open and close. Villages celebrate festivals. Farmers tend fields. Merchants conduct business. Monasteries copy manuscripts. Ships cross seas. Kings negotiate alliances. Wars begin. Wars end. Most of these events feel distant from the daily routines of a servant. Yet they still influence life indirectly. A conflict may disrupt trade. A successful harvest may lower food prices. A new lord may alter household priorities. The castle is never completely isolated. It exists within a larger network of relationships and events. Even when those events seem far away. Sometimes news arrives suddenly. A rider appears at the gate. A letter is delivered. A messenger carries important information. The atmosphere shifts. Conversations become more animated. Speculation spreads. Questions circulate. What happened? Who is involved? What will it mean? Humans have always been curious. Servants are no exception. People want to understand the forces shaping their world, even when they possess only fragments of information. Often, those fragments travel through conversation. The kitchen hears one version. The stables hear another. The guards hear a third. By evening, the story may have acquired several additional details that were never part of the original message. Information has always been flexible when passed from person to person. Some traditions appear remarkably unchanged across centuries. As night settles over the castle once more, the familiar routines return. The gates are secured. The fires are checked. The animals are cared for. The halls grow quiet. Another day reaches its conclusion. A day filled with ordinary work. The kind of work that rarely appears in chronicles. The kind of work that historians often struggle to reconstruct. Yet it is precisely this work that forms the foundation of medieval life. Not dramatic battles, not royal ceremonies, but ordinary labor performed by ordinary people. People who woke before dawn. People who kept households functioning. People who maintained the structures, routines, and communities upon which everything else depended. And somewhere within the castle, as the final embers glow softly beneath a layer of ash, another servant settles down to rest. Knowing that morning will come again. Knowing that the routines will begin again. And knowing, perhaps, that their efforts are part of something larger than any single day. A continuous rhythm stretching across years, generations, and centuries. A rhythm woven into the very stones of the castle itself. There are evenings when the castle feels almost peaceful. Not silent, because a medieval castle is rarely silent. But peaceful in the way a place can become after a long day of activity. The great hall has emptied. The busiest hours in the kitchens have passed. Most of the household has settled into the slower rhythm of the night. The fires burn steadily. The air smells faintly of smoke and cooked food. Outside, darkness spreads across the countryside. Inside, pools of warm firelight flicker against ancient stone. For a servant, these moments can feel surprisingly valuable. The day has demanded much. Physical effort, patience, attention, endurance. Now, for a little while, those demands begin to ease. You may find yourself sitting near a hearth alongside other members of the household staff. No grand feast is taking place. No important ceremony is unfolding. Just a handful of tired people enjoying a brief period of rest. Someone tells a story. Someone shares a joke. Someone complains about an especially difficult task from earlier in the day. Laughter appears. Not loud laughter. Not the laughter of celebration. The quieter laughter of people who have worked together long enough to understand one another. These small social moments matter more than they might seem. Human beings are not designed for endless labor alone. They need companionship, conversation, shared experiences. Even in a world defined by hierarchy, work, and responsibility, people still seek connection. Perhaps especially in such a world. Over time, the bonds formed between servants can become extraordinarily strong. After all, they spend much of their lives together. They experience the same winters, the same harvests, the same challenges, the same routines. Shared hardship has a way of creating familiarity, and familiarity often becomes friendship. Of course, not every relationship is harmonious. People disagree. Arguments happen. Tempers occasionally flare. The medieval castle contains no shortage of strong personalities. Yet even conflicts become part of the social fabric of daily life. Tomorrow, the work still needs to be done. The fire still needs tending. The horses still need feeding. Practical necessity encourages cooperation. One of the more interesting realities of castle life is how much information circulates through informal conversation. The official decisions may come from the lord or steward, but the household often learns about events through rumors long before any announcement is made. Perhaps a visitor is expected. Perhaps a marriage is being discussed. Perhaps changes are coming to the estate. Word spreads, sometimes accurately, sometimes less accurately. The kitchens become centers of information. The stables become centers of information. People talk. People speculate. People wonder. In many ways, this is no different from modern workplaces. The technology changes. Human curiosity remains remarkably consistent. As the night grows later, however, conversations begin to fade. Fatigue eventually wins. The body can only do so much, especially after years of physical labor. A servant's life demands energy, and energy requires rest. This simple reality shapes daily schedules throughout the medieval world. Most people cannot afford to stay awake late into the night without reason. Tomorrow's responsibilities arrive regardless of how tired you feel. The morning bell waits for no one. And so people sleep earlier than many modern individuals might expect. The absence of artificial lighting reinforces this pattern. Darkness naturally encourages rest. The medieval night feels different. Longer, deeper, more complete. Outside the reach of firelight, the world disappears into shadow. The stars become extraordinary. Without electric illumination competing against them, they fill the sky in astonishing numbers. A servant crossing the courtyard may pause briefly and look upward. The same stars shine above the castle that shine above distant kingdoms, forests, rivers, mountains, and seas. The same stars observed by travelers, farmers, merchants, monks, nobles, and kings. There is something quietly humbling about that realization. Life inside the castle can feel all-encompassing. The routines are demanding. The responsibilities are constant. Yet the wider world remains vast, far larger than any individual household, far larger than any individual life. Most servants will never travel great distances. Travel is expensive, time-consuming, often difficult. Many people spend much of their lives within a relatively limited region. Yet stories help bridge those distances. Travelers arrive with news. Merchants describe unfamiliar places. Pilgrims recount long journeys. Soldiers share experiences from distant campaigns. Through these stories, the world expands. A servant sitting beside a fire may never see a great city, may never cross an ocean, may never visit a royal court. Yet they can still imagine such places. And imagination has always been a powerful thing. The medieval world often seems smaller than our own. In some ways, it is. Communication moves slowly. Travel takes time. Information spreads gradually. Yet human curiosity remains limitless. People wonder about distant lands. People wonder about unfamiliar customs. People wonder about what lies beyond the horizon. Those questions are timeless. As years continue passing, certain servants become fixtures within the household. Everyone knows them. Everyone recognizes them. They have simply always been there. The experienced cook, the trusted stable master, the elderly gatekeeper, the servant who remembers events from decades earlier. These individuals provide continuity. The castle changes around them. New workers arrive. Old workers leave. Children grow into adults. Generations pass. Yet some familiar figures remain. Their presence becomes reassuring. A reminder that not everything changes at once. When such people eventually retire, depart, or pass away, their absence is felt. The routines continue. The castle continues. But something is different. The household notices. This too is part of life. Communities evolve. People come and go. The world moves forward. Even within the seemingly unchanging walls of a medieval castle. Perhaps this is one of the most important truths about servant life. From a distance, it appears repetitive. And in many ways it is. The same duties. The same schedules. The same responsibilities. Yet beneath that repetition lies constant change. Relationships change. People change. Circumstances change. The castle itself changes. Life continues unfolding in thousands of small ways. Most of them too ordinary to appear in history books. Yet deeply important to the people living them. Because history is not only made of famous moments. It is also made of ordinary evenings beside a fire. Shared conversations after a long day. Friendships formed through years of cooperation. Lessons passed from one generation to another. Small acts of kindness. Small acts of patience. Small acts of effort. The things that rarely survive in written records, yet often matter most. As another night settles over the castle, the final sounds of the day begin fading away. The fires burn lower. The halls grow quieter. The stars continue their slow journey overhead. And somewhere within those ancient stone walls, countless servants prepare to sleep. Ready to rise again before dawn. Ready to begin another day. Not because it is easy. Not because it is glamorous. But because the castle depends upon them. Just as it always has. And just as it always will, for as long as its fires continue to burn and its walls continue to stand. As the years accumulate, it becomes easier to understand why so many people spend most of their lives within the same household. At first glance, this may seem surprising. The work is difficult. The hours are long. The rewards are often modest. Yet human beings have always valued something that is difficult to measure. Familiarity. A familiar place. Familiar faces. A familiar routine. Over time, these things become deeply important. A servant who has spent 20 years inside a castle knows far more than where the rooms are located. They know the rhythms of the household. They know how the building sounds during a storm. They know which corners stay cold longest in winter. They know which parts of the courtyard flood after heavy rain. They know when the first swallows return in spring. They know when the leaves begin falling from the great trees beyond the walls. The castle becomes woven into memory. Its physical spaces become connected to years of experience. A particular doorway may remind someone of a conversation that happened long ago. A section of wall may recall a celebration from decades earlier. A fireplace may bring back memories of friends who are no longer there. Places collect memories, and few places collect as many as a castle that has sheltered generations of people. For servants, this creates a unique relationship with the building. The castle is not merely stone. It becomes a witness, a silent observer of countless human lives. Births, deaths, weddings, arguments, festivals, everyday routines. The walls see everything. They simply never speak. One of the most noticeable changes over time involves the people themselves. Young workers arrive full of uncertainty. They move carefully. They ask questions. They worry about mistakes. Years later, those same individuals often become the confident workers, guiding others. The transformation happens so gradually that it can be difficult to notice while it is occurring. Yet eventually, the evidence becomes undeniable. Experience changes people, not only by teaching practical skills, by shaping perspective. An older servant often approaches problems differently than a younger one. A difficult situation that might cause anxiety in a newcomer may simply produce a patient sigh from someone who has encountered similar challenges many times before. Experience rarely eliminates problems. It teaches how to manage them. This quiet wisdom forms an important part of castle life. Knowledge is passed forward continuously, sometimes formally, often informally. A suggestion offered while working, advice shared during a meal, a warning about a common mistake. Practical lessons move from person to person, generation to generation. The process never really stops. And because of this, the castle retains a kind of memory even as individual people come and go. Skills survive. Methods survive. Traditions survive, long after their original teachers are gone. This continuity gives the household stability. The medieval world can be uncertain in many ways. Weather changes. Politics changes. Economic conditions change. Yet daily routines provide a sense of order. People find comfort in knowing what tomorrow is likely to bring, even if tomorrow also brings hard work. Predictability has value, especially during difficult times. As evening settles over the castle once again, the sounds of daily life begin their familiar decline. The busiest work has been completed. Animals have been fed. Meals have been served. Rooms have been prepared. The great machine of the household gradually slows. Not because the work disappears, because enough of it has been finished for one day. The remaining tasks can wait until morning. This transition from activity to rest is one of the most pleasant parts of the day. The body welcomes it. Muscles relax. The mind becomes quieter. The constant urgency begins fading. For a brief period, there is little that needs immediate attention. The fires burn steadily. The walls stand secure. The household settles. Peace, however temporary, arrives. Imagine stepping outside into the courtyard during one of these quiet evenings. The air is cool. The sky is clear. Above you, countless stars shine brightly. The towers rise into the darkness, their outlines visible against the night sky. A gentle breeze moves through the open spaces. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls. The countryside beyond the walls lies, hidden beneath darkness. Only occasional lights reveal distant villages. The scene feels calm, almost timeless. Moments like this remind us that medieval life is not composed entirely of hardship. Difficulty exists, plenty of it. Yet so do moments of beauty, moments of stillness, moments of reflection. Human beings have always found comfort in simple things. A warm fire, a familiar voice, a clear night sky, a place to rest after a long day. These experiences transcend centuries. They connect people across time. Perhaps that is one reason history remains so fascinating. The details change. The technology changes. The clothing changes. The buildings change. Yet certain aspects of human life remain remarkably familiar. People seek security. People seek friendship. People seek purpose. People seek belonging. A servant in a medieval castle is no different. The circumstances may seem distant from our modern world, but the emotions often feel surprisingly recognizable. The satisfaction of completing a difficult task, the comfort of trusted companions, the relief of returning home after work, the hope that tomorrow will be manageable. These experiences are timeless. As the night deepens, more windows grow dark. The last conversations begin fading. The final chores are completed. The castle prepares for sleep. And perhaps now, after spending so much time within these walls, it is easier to understand what life was really like for a servant in a medieval castle. Not the romantic version found in stories. Not the dramatic version centered on kings and battles. The real version. A life built upon work, routine, responsibility, community, patience, adaptation, and quiet perseverance. A life that demanded much from those who lived it, yet also provided structure, purpose, and belonging. The servants who walked these corridors were rarely famous. Most left behind no written records, no monuments, no grand memorials. Yet their efforts shaped the daily reality of castle life. Without them, the fires would have gone out. The halls would have emptied. The kitchens would have fallen silent. The household itself could not have functioned. They were the unseen foundation beneath the visible grandeur. And perhaps they deserve to be remembered for that. Not as background figures, not as footnotes, but as people. Ordinary people living ordinary lives in an extraordinary setting. People who woke before dawn, worked until evening, shared stories beside the fire, watched the seasons pass, grew older, made friends, faced challenges, and carried on, just as countless generations of ordinary people have done throughout history. And now, as the castle settles completely into the quiet embrace of the night, the fires glow softly beneath layers of ash. The stars continue their slow journey across the sky. The ancient walls stand silent, and somewhere within them, another servant drifts peacefully into sleep, while tomorrow waits patiently beyond the horizon. The castle is quiet now. Not completely quiet, because complete silence is rare in any age. A distant horse shifts in its stall. A beam settles with a faint creak. The wind brushes gently against ancient stone. Somewhere, a guard continues his watch beneath the stars. But compared to the bustle of the day, the castle feels almost still. The fires have burned low. The kitchens rest. The great hall stands empty. The long tables that hosted meals and conversations now wait patiently for another morning. For the first time all day, very little is expected of anyone. And perhaps this is the perfect moment to reflect on what life was really like for a servant in a medieval castle. Not the fantasy, not the romantic picture painted by later centuries. The reality, a reality shaped by effort, by routine, by responsibility, by countless ordinary actions repeated over and over again. When people imagine castles, they often picture the most dramatic elements. Towering walls, armored knights, powerful lords, grand feasts, colorful banners, and all of those things certainly existed. Yet they represented only part of the story. Beneath every feast stood a kitchen full of workers. Behind every warm chamber stood servants carrying fuel. Behind every polished hall stood someone sweeping floors. Behind every comfortable bed stood someone preparing it. The visible world of nobility depended entirely upon an invisible world of labor. And that labor never truly stopped. It began before dawn. It ended long after sunset. It followed the seasons. It followed the needs of the household. It followed the rhythm of the castle itself. A servant's life was not usually dramatic. Most days passed without great adventure. Most days involved familiar responsibilities. The same corridors, the same rooms, the same tasks, the same faces. And yet within those routines existed an entire human life. A life filled with friendships, conversations, private worries, small victories, quiet disappointments, moments of laughter, moments of exhaustion, moments of contentment. History sometimes makes the past feel distant, as though the people who lived centuries ago were somehow different from us. But the closer we look, the more familiar they become. The servant rising before dawn did not think of themselves as a historical figure. They thought about the day ahead, the work waiting to be done, the people they would see, the meals they would prepare, the responsibilities they carried. Much like people today, the details have changed. The emotions remain surprisingly recognizable. Perhaps that is one of the most remarkable things about exploring the past. Across centuries of technological change, political change, and social change, human nature remains astonishingly consistent. People still seek comfort. People still seek security. People still seek companionship. People still seek meaning in their daily lives. The servant in a medieval castle sought those things too. Sometimes they found them in friendship. Sometimes in routine. Sometimes in faith. Sometimes simply in surviving another difficult day and enjoying a few quiet moments beside a warm fire. And there were quiet moments, even in a demanding life. A sunrise over the castle walls. The smell of fresh bread in the morning. The first warmth of spring after a long winter. The sight of stars above a silent courtyard. The comfort of familiar voices after years spent working together. Small moments, yet often the moments people remember most. Years passed. Generations passed. Children became adults. Adults became elders. New servants arrived. Old servants departed. The castle endured through all of it, watching silently, its stones absorbing countless footsteps, its halls echoing with countless voices, its walls witnessing thousands of ordinary days. Many of the people who lived and worked there left behind no written record, no official history, no famous achievements. And yet their lives mattered deeply, because history is not only the story of kings and queens. It is also the story of everyone else. The cooks, the stable hands, the laundry workers, the gatekeepers, the cleaners, the messengers, the countless individuals whose efforts made everyday life possible. Without them, the castle would have been little more than empty stone. Their labor gave it life. Their routines gave it order. Their presence gave it humanity. And perhaps that is why their story remains worth telling. Not because it is filled with dramatic battles or extraordinary adventures, but because it reveals something true about the human experience. Most lives are not built from grand events. Most lives are built from ordinary days. Days spent working, helping others, solving problems, building relationships, facing challenges, finding small moments of joy where they can be found. The servant's life was very much such a life. Demanding, structured, often tiring, sometimes frustrating, yet also meaningful in ways that are easy to overlook. As the night deepens further, the castle seems almost suspended in time. The stars move slowly overhead. The wind continues its journey across fields and forests. The countryside sleeps beneath the darkness. And within the ancient walls, the household rests. Tomorrow, the cycle will begin again. Before sunrise, someone will wake. A fire will need tending. Water will need carrying. Food will need preparing. Doors will need opening. Animals will need feeding. The endless rhythm of castle life will continue. As it has for years. As it has for generations. As it likely will for generations yet to come. But tonight, none of those tasks matter. Tonight, the work is finished. The buckets are set aside. The fires are safe. The halls are quiet. The responsibilities can wait until morning. There is only the calm of the present moment. The gentle crackle of a fading ember. The distant whisper of the wind. The reassuring stillness of thick stone walls that have stood through countless seasons. And perhaps, if you listen carefully, you can almost imagine the countless servants who once walked these corridors. Not rushing now. Not carrying burdens. Not hurrying toward another task. Simply resting. Enjoying a rare moment of peace at the end of a long day. The castle sleeps. The countryside sleeps. The stars continue their silent journey across the sky. And our journey through this medieval world slowly comes to an end. So let the towers fade into darkness. Let the firelight grow softer. Let the sounds of the castle drift farther away. And leave behind for now the long corridors, the stone walls, the kitchens, the courtyards, and the lives of those who served within them. Their day is over. And perhaps yours is too. Good night.